Namaskar, Nilesh Oak. In this episode, I will look at a question or rather a comment from one individual to one of my YouTube video. And again, this is a typical question or a typical comment and referring to very familiar type of evidence from Purana that is made use of by many individuals trying to figure out the year of Mahabharata war. We will look at what is that evidence, what different variations that exist, and why it is inferior type of evidence. This is not to say we cannot make use of this evidence. In fact, once we find out a year of Mahabharata war from internal evidence of Mahabharata text, one may look at this evidence to see if any of it seems to appear to corroborate the timing of Mahabharata that one may arrive based on the primary evidence that is the Mahabharata text. So let's jump into the presentation itself. All right, just to give a appropriate title, what I think appropriate, I have called this King Parikshit to King Mahananda, or simply we will use the word King Nanda or just Nanda, from Parikshit to Nanda. And there are assumptions here that the King Parikshit we are referring to is the son of Abhimanyu, who was son of Arjun, who fought during the Mahabharata war. Of course, Abhimanyu also fought during the Mahabharata war. And Parikshit was born just in a few months after the Mahabharata war ended. Therefore, at least as far as the birth time of Parikshit is concerned, we have that time as which is same as the timing of Mahabharata war. Then we have some accounts. Again, other than a Shabda Praman, there is nothing that we have to allows us to verify it, but Parikshit lived for approximately 60 years. So the timing when stated in Purana from the time of Parikshit to King Nanda, King Parikshit to King Nanda, Nanda as in the timing of Chanakya, it could be the time when Parikshit was born, it could be the time when Parikshit was coronated as a king, or it could be the time when Parikshit left his body. Okay, so it could be any of it. That essentially is going to create a very small error of 60 years. Not a big deal. I just wanted to mention it. On the side of Nanda, the time of Chanakya, we even have a bigger issue. Now, many people may feel this surprising. Nanda or Chanakya, whatever his timing, is actually much, much closer to us than the timing of Mahabharata. Interestingly, and thanks to the great Bhagwan Vyasadeva, because he meticulously noted down the details, all kinds of observations, all kinds of descriptions at the time of Mahabharata war, we are lucky that we can actually pinpoint the exact year. Unfortunately, that is not the case when it comes to determining the timing of Nanda and therefore Chanakya. Let's look at some of the evidence. But before that, what triggered me to do this? Now, keep in mind, guys, when I pick a comment from one of the YouTube videos, it is just really, what do you call it? It serves as a intuition engine. It serves as an excuse for something that I want to discuss anyways. Just a few days ago, I discussed the observation of Arundhati Vasishta, why it is significant. And again, just as a excuse, if you want to call it, I picked up the comment from one Mr. Fadkeji, And then I elaborated all different types, the angles and the different versions that people ask this question. Unfortunately, Sri Phadkeji took this in a negative spirit, or not so much negative spirit, but he felt hurt and he thought like I did not understand his question, which is very possible, very likely. But he also felt that he had asked a question somewhere else about Bhishma Nirvana and I had not taken in the right spirit. Well, I can just tell you my side of the story and leave it to everyone else to decide how they want to interpret what I say and how they should feel about it. I use this as an excuse, as a good occasion to discuss the subjects that I want to discuss anyways. But if we give a context of somebody asking, and these are the frequently asked questions, so then what I do is I use that as an excuse, but then discuss all the different permutations and combinations of the different questions asked by different folks. And that includes common folks, that includes other Mahabharata dating researchers, that includes trolls, that includes totally clueless people who almost look at anything Indian in a very vicious manner, in a very anti type of attitude. So I discuss all those possibilities because in one place I can discuss this related to that specific evidence. There is nothing more to it in my mind when I quote somebody. Okay, so in this case, again, I don't know who this person is, Mayank. So Mayank, M-Y-A. Let's call him Mayank for this discussion. He wrote as a comment that many people date Mahabharata around 1500 BCE based on the Puranas, which state that Parikshit lived for 1100 years before the coronation of Mahapadmananda, and he gives the timing of Mahapadmananda as 400 BCE. This is very interesting, guys. Okay, so yes, it is true that there are some individuals who claim that the Mahabharata war happened around 1500 BCE. And honestly, I think it would have been nice if they would have said, look, I am not looking at any other evidence. I am simply looking at this Purana description of the time duration between Parikshit and Mahapadmananda to be equal to 1100 years, and Mahapadmananda's timing, that I am, meaning that individual, whoever came up with this 1500 BC as the timing of Mahabharata, is assuming the timing of Nanda to be 400 BCE, and that's it. Okay, then we can analyze this, and we are going to do that in a way, and this business just goes on. For example, Mayank has said it approximately around 1500 BC. Many people will come up with very specific years, okay, based on claiming this Purana evidence is how they arrived at it. I wish they were honest in saying this, because then we can ask the question, based on the information you have, I cannot see how one can come up with a very specific year. But these people who make use of this evidence or claim to claim that they have made use of this evidence and still claim a very specific years. Okay, there is a problem with this, because the kind of evidence that is available in any of the Puranas is such that you will not able to arrive at a very specific year, and we will see why that is so. Anyways, my quick comments, now I did not write it on the YouTube site, but I'm writing them here, is for the benefit of whoever is listening to this, is that these Purana references, and we are going to look at some of them, maybe not all of them, these Purana references are most frequently used references and therefore most abused references. This is my comment, guys, okay? But frankly, there is more, and in some sense, what more that I'm going to discuss, the additional 5 points, are actually the reason they are most frequently abused references. The information is there in the Puranas and we should make use of it, but we should make use of that information without overriding the information given by the reference itself. Okay, so what are some of the issues? Well, there is no one reference, like for example quoted by Mayank ji, and I'm not saying Mayank ji is not aware of other references. Again, guys, if I get into these nitty-gritty details, I will be just wasting my time into the formalities and etiquettes and pleasantries. So therefore, I just usually avoid all of this and get into the subject. So there are numerous variations. What does that mean? Different Puranas say different things for this duration of time period interval between Parikshit and Nanda. What to speak of that? Even the same Purana at different places will give you different durations. Okay. The next one, all of these are secondary references, secondary evidence to Mahabharata text. Again, it goes back to the common sense. If you want to find out something about Mahabharata, where would you begin? Common sense, guys, common sense. Always remind yourself you will begin with the Mahabharata text. Other than 5561 BCE, you can go and start with any researchers. Okay, there are 130 of them in the last 400 years. You will find each and every time the person begins with somewhere else other than the Mahabharata text. What to speak of that? As their primary evidence, they will use the evidence which is outside the Mahabharata text. And occasionally they make use of the Mahabharata text because with the hope that no one objects to their methodology, and just as a cursory, like a lip service, you can say, they will try to find evidence from the Mahabharata text, which, there is a 300 plus astronomy evidence, 200 plus river Saraswati evidence, and there are all kinds of descriptions which can be tested against the empirical evidence if one is ingenious enough. One understands scientific acumen, one understands logical reasoning skills, and one is adept, one is good at Tantra Yukti, they can do that. Not many do it, by the way, but most of them pick the evidence internal to Mahabharata text in a cherry picking fashion, which is one of the well known fallacy, which means if somebody does that, the answer is going to be wrong, but it even doesn't matter. It's like, the buck stops there. We have to stop the whole game there. They are not being honest. They are not interested in finding the truth. They are interested in supporting their own agenda. This must be understood. So these references, nothing wrong with making use of them. In fact, it exists, and so we should make use of them. Important to understand, they are secondary references to Mahabharata text. So the internal evidence of Mahabharata takes precedence. Okay, point number 3. These references which refer to duration of time period between Parikshit and Nanda, they are not empirically testable. You read the sentence, you can take it in a Shraddha, and you may say, okay, so maybe Mahabharata, just like Mayankji has said, maybe Mahabharata happened in 1500 BCE. And most of these people stop right there. And how stupid is that? In fact, if they have found such a number, the natural thing to do is to now go back to Mahabharata and ask the question, what does Mahabharata has to say about this? And I'll tell you guys, there is no reference in the Mahabharata text that can be empirically tested, especially if you are doing this in a scientific fashion, which means you cannot do this in a cherry picking fashion. You can look at all the 300 plus astronomy descriptions. This is not a choice. If you are following scientific method, you must look at them. Now in reality, what will happen is some of the evidence will support whatever you are claiming and other evidence will go against it. That's natural. However, you must look at all 300 of them. But the important point I want to make is that this particular evidence here from the Puranas is not empirically testable, and therefore it is not scientific. Okay, but if you have arrived at such a date, the next question you must ask is, okay, the Purana reference is leading me to 1500 BCE. What does Mahabharata has to say? And if you do this exercise, you will realize that there is no evidence whatsoever in the Mahabharata text either astronomy or non-astronomy that will take you to anywhere near 1500 BCE. In fact, there is no reference astronomy, there is no evidence astronomy or non-astronomy in the Mahabharata text that will scientifically, logically will bring you anywhere to any year, any time after 4500 BCE period. And that should shock somebody who has made a conclusion that possibly Mahabharata war happened in 1500 BCE. Okay, bullet number 4. They do not act as crucial and clinching evidence, and that's what I mean. This is not objectively testable, and therefore it does not act as a crucial or clinching evidence. So 3 and 4 are connected. And the last point here, those who use them in cherry picking fashion. Okay, in a very it's a fallacy, and therefore it needs to be rebuked. We need to tell the person, guys, or whoever, this is not how you do research. This is a wrong way of doing research. This is a foolish way of doing research. This is an idiotic way of doing research. Stop this nonsense. That's what we need to tell them. Now let's look at some of the references from the Puranas. So Mayank ji is referring to 1100 years. Okay, so that is one reference. And yes, there are a few other Puranas. If you go to Matsya Purana and some other Puranas, you are going to look at few others. I'm going to, this is again just a sake of demonstration. The conclusion doesn't change. I'm going to look at or rather show 2 or 3 different Puranas and maybe 3 or 4 different references. All right, let's begin. Bhagavat Purana. As I said, the Bhagavat Purana itself has 2 different conflicting references for the exactly same information, which is to say, namely the time duration between Parikshit and Nanda. In one place, this is in the Skanda 9. I will not read the details. You can actually pause the video and go through the Sanskrit shlok as well as the translation. But the long story short, okay, if you add up those years, they add up to 1500 years. Okay, so 1000 plus 138 plus 360. You can pause the video, read the descriptions, read the details. And if this does not tell you everything, guys, always, and if you don't understand this, you are not ready for this, always go to Google, just type whatever the keywords that come to your mind and have a blast. Okay, so one reference, one set of reference there, it gives you a estimate of 1500 years between Parikshit and Nanda. Mayankji said 1100 years. So let's wherever that source was, let's use that as a one reference. The second reference is this 1500 years. Guess what? There is a third reference. Okay, this comes in the last and the 12th skanda of Bhagavat Puran. And what it says, because it's a short, I will read the translation there. Beginning from your birth, that is, somebody, Shukra Goswami or somebody telling to Parikshit, up to the coronation of King Nanda, 1150 years will pass. Now guys, if I don't swiftly pass through it, it will lead to another digression, but I must mention it. Now somebody will start thinking, rightfully so, that how come somebody is telling Parikshit, okay? Just look at that translation, okay? And also the shlok. Somebody is telling Parikshit, the same Parikshit, assuming it's the same Parikshit, that look, from your birth up to the coronation of King Nanda, 1150 years will pass. Okay, so how did they make this prediction? Okay, and because like some people will just take this information, actually they do. I'm not making a war story. And then in a very dogmatic, very dull, idiotic fashion, I don't have any other name for it, they will jump and start saying, oh, look, our folks were so good at predicting what's going to happen in future, and look what they did. Nonsense. That's not how this Purana writing works. Many times, because the way we explain things changes from time to time, changes from millennium to millennium. It changes between individuals, how they articulate things. It changes between languages. And again, I can take 10 digressions and I'll tell you all the wonderful stories, right from China, in something happening in Chinese language, to French language, to English, to Italian, and to Spanish, how some things get lost in translation. This is a good case of that. For example, in the 12th Skanda, and remember it's a Bhagavat Purana is a Smriti Grantha, which means they are meant to be updated. So what happens is Vyasadeva would have written a certain portion of Bhagavat Puran, and that continued through oral or written tradition. However, at some point somebody felt like updating it. So they may not have changed everything else, and but they update it with some shloka. So possibly this is written, and again I'm guessing it, sometime after the time of Chanakya and Nanda. And so there, based on whatever knowledge that these writers had post Nanda, post Chanakya, about their own imagination or whatever information sources they had, based on that they are writing, okay, the 1150 years passed between it. And that's why we see this variation. That also explains why there are variations. It's like somebody asking, hey, what's the exact distance, or not exact, but what's the distance between Mumbai and Delhi? And of course, one has to specify the question, but let's not make it even complicated. Somebody may say it's 1000 kilometers. Another person says, I think it's 1000 miles, and then you may go into different discussions. These are estimates, okay? Estimates given in a particular context. These are not precise readings, but even more challenging issue is they cannot be objectively verified. In principle, they can be. My point is, until now, I don't know of anyone who has devised any Tantra Yukti to objectively test them. So we have to take these as estimates. Also recognize there are different estimates. So Mayankji already referred to 1100. Bhagavat Purana itself is giving two different estimates, and Mayankji is also saying it is from Bhagavat Purana. So maybe there is a third reference that I am not aware. Okay, so one reference in Bhagavat Purana is saying 1100, another is saying 1500, another is saying 1150 years. Okay, let's look at the Vishnu Purana. And what is Vishnu Puran saying? 1050 years. Okay. Now just look at this shlok for a second. Yavat Parikshito Janma. Okay. Yavan Nandabhi Shechanam. Etad Varsha Sasram tu. But just remember the first line, and I want to take you back for a second. And look at this line again. Arabhya Bhavato Janma Yavan Nandabhi Shechanam. Even you see literally some of the words are similar. Okay, now the reason I'm bringing this point is many times, almost all times, again in a foolish fashion, in an incorrect fashion, in a wrong fashion, people take these references, one from Bhagavat Puran, one from Vishnu Puran, as if like an independent piece of information. Yes, in some cases it is, in many cases it is not. Just somebody said something, the other person is repeating it. Again, I can guys tell you war stories from the corporate world. How I would give somebody a piece of information. In fact, 10 different people will come to me asking for a piece of information. To each one of them, I give the same piece of information, but then they apply their own set of assumptions, logic, modifications, and they come up with 10 different numbers. And then they, based on that, they create their forecast, marketing plan, sales plan, and propose it. And then in the big meeting, there will be a discussion. Oh, okay, wow, why did you use a GDP rate of 3.7 and somebody else has used 3.2? And there will be all kinds of useless and wasteful discussion. The bottom line is, everything started with me saying the GDP estimate for the next year is 3.5. And somebody is saying, let me take a bit conservative. Somebody says, let me take it bit aggressive. So that person goes to 3.7. The one who wants to use it conservative goes for 3.2, and so on. Okay, something like this is possibly happening here. It's a hearsay information that has been documented. Again, that is one reason why we cannot come up with a precise year, but why we cannot actually find easy way to objectively verify this. And how are we going to verify this? Are we referring to different Nanda and different Parikshit if we are looking at these different numbers? No. So then, or maybe yes, okay, then somebody has to come up with the evidence. Let's go further to Vishnu Puran, and this is giving another number. So if we add Mayankji's number, then now we already have, I think, 4 different numbers. Okay, so this is from Vishnu Puran. Well, we are not done. Actually, we will not be done. So I'm going to stop after this Skanda Purana reference, and people interested can go to internet and all our Puranas, and hey, have a blast. In Skanda Purana, now pay attention to this, because all these Mahabharata researchers who make use of this Purana evidence as if like it's such amazing evidence, it's not amazing evidence. It is what it is. Okay, don't override what it is telling you. Okay, but these same Mahabharata dating researchers, as soon as you utter the word Skanda Purana evidence for the duration between Parikshit and Nanda, they go silent. Okay, because it destroys what they are trying to claim. Okay, in the Skanda Purana, one of the very big Puranas, okay, the first Kanda, Maheshwara Kanda, and within that section 2, Kumarika Kanda, and we have many chapters. In chapter 40 and verse 251, you get this shlok. And what it is saying, quickly jump to translation. Thereafter, in the year 3310 of the Kali era, again remember, this is a Smriti literature and updates are made, the kingdom of the Nandas will come into being and Chanakya will kill them. Now remember, we saw this future tense, will happen before with the Bhagavata references here, on the right side. Okay, 50 years will pass, and here also we are saying Chanakya will kill them. Okay, now what is this referring to? This is a style of those individuals who updated Puranas to make a distinction that, hey, this is already written, this is how I received it, and now I am, meaning that individual who updated that particular entry, to indicate that he or she is making that update, they used as if like this is happening in future. Actually, they are referring to the event of a past, and therefore they're documenting, but they're saying, hey, I am adding it to what existed here. So something was added to the Purana, and to indicate that, they use the style which comes out to us as a future tense. So this is not to be confused, but again I am making a very important point. Keep that in mind when you are studying Puranas for any other purpose that you may be using it for. Alright, so what is Skanda Purana is saying? Skanda Purana is saying between Parikshit and Nanda, there was a time interval of about 3,310 years. Now it may be this information may be tough to bring it together like in a mind space, so I'm going to turn that into numbers and a table. Before we go there, so far we talked about the duration. Now the second aspect is what is the timing of Nanda and Parikshit? Nanda and Chanakya. They are contemporary. Now why are we doing this? Don't forget the original prayojan, which is to find the timing of Mahabharata and therefore timing of Parikshit. Here we are going from a few unknowns to another unknown, and that's our challenge. We have, for the duration itself, we have these various estimates. They are estimates, and there is a huge variation, right from 1050 years to 3310 years. Okay, what kind of evidence is this, guys? Not very useful. It's going to give us a range, and still we are not confident about it. But it gets worse. The timing of Chanakya or Nanda itself, there is no decisive, crucial, empirically testable evidence that can tell us the timing of Nanda was this. So actually many individuals have come up with many different dates using all kinds of methods, some of them better than others, but in the end none of them scientific, none of them empirical. I am not saying that you shouldn't use the method. Guess what? If you don't have any other one, any other method, then you use what you have, and that's a good starting point. The problem is you use extremely lousy type of evidence like this, and then making a big tall claim for a precise year of Mahabharat war is basically unscientific, illogical, idiotic, foolish, and nonsensical. That is the point I want to bring up here. So the variation for the timing of Chanakya and therefore Nanda varies from 300 BCE through 2300 BCE. If you again go back to the Mayankji's comment, he has put there from whatever source he received the timing of Chanakya or Nanda as 400 BCE. Okay, now he might have said this is approximate one. Well, everything here is approximate. Okay, anyways, so the timing of Chanakya or Nanda varies from 300 BCE through 2300 BCE. I'm not going to go into that. There are numbers in between, but let's put it together. And yeah, just for a minute, this is a Wikipedia entry that Chanakya is shown as a 300 BCE. Again, if you go and ask them what is the evidence, none, zero, guys, zero. I mean, they will talk and talk, but there is no evidence even that can be tested in an empirical fashion. Forget it. But there is not even a logically consistent evidence. That is the challenge. Even the way they infer these numbers is not logical. That's my point. Okay, so now let's put those together into a table form. This Skanda Purana reference, I was not aware of it. In fact, I did not use any of these references the way I arrived at the date of Mahabharat war. I stuck myself to the internal evidence of the Mahabharata text. I have not gone outside while figuring it out the year of Mahabharat war. Now, if the evidence internal to Mahabharata text is not sufficient, is it okay to go outside Mahabharata text? Of course. Even if you have a sufficient evidence in the Mahabharata text, it is still okay, in fact encouraged to go outside. But that is always going to be a secondary evidence, and it may corroborate, it may not corroborate, and you can always ask the question why it does not corroborate, and so on. This evidence from Skanda Purana, as I said, I was not aware, and Jivan Rao, who wrote this Yuganta, a wonderful book, The Advent of Kali Yuga. By the way, when I mention a book, I don't do this as a marketing or anything like this. It's an amazing book published by Subbu Publications. It's also available on Amazon. You go, whatever is your fancy, either to directly to Amazon or go directly to Subbu Publications. Especially if you are in India, Subbu Publications is the best choice. Okay, they will deliver it to your house at the best price. Worth reading, amazing piece of work, amazing piece of original research by a 20-year-old. Now he's 25 or so, but when he started researching, he was 20-year-old, and when he published it, he was 23-year-old. Okay. And he, so I'm quoting it from his book. I think I'm quoting it from his book. And he writes there, it may be worth pointing out that the Skanda Puran reference of the 3,310-year interval and the mainstream dating of Nanda Chanakya ranging from 400 BC to 2300 BCE puts the Mahabharata at least before 3500 BC. Now, this will tell you why any Mahabharata dating researcher who makes use of these Puranic references do not refer to Skanda Puran evidence. This is very dishonest. This is also a cherry-picking fallacy. Now, that's not to say that Skanda Purana evidence has more weightage than the Bhagavat Puran or Vishnu Puran evidence, at least not prima facie. Prathama Darshini, no. But once you understand what the internal evidence of Mahabharata text is saying, actually you will say, hey, it appears that Skanda Purana is making more sense than the evidence from Bhagavat Puran or Vishnu Puran. So he's saying, just taking the entire range from 400 BC to 2300 BC, that puts the Mahabharata at least before 3500 BC, therefore instantaneously, consequently falsifying 96% of all Mahabharata claims. And he's writing very crisply, for this reason most Mahabharata researchers totally disregard this Skanda Puran reference and focus only on the 1500-year range of the other Puranas to substantiate their dates for the Mahabharata war. I mean, guys, this is an extremely weak corroborative evidence at best. Okay, use it, I'm not saying discard it, But to build a foundation on this is basically shows the bankruptcy of one's thinking, one's scientific acumen, one logical reasoning skills, and actually the source evidence one is making use of. But that is not how one should study Indian narratives. Jivan continues. One should not arbitrarily take one Purana as authoritative evidence and reject another to support their subjective conclusions. The Puranic evidence relating to the Mahabharata should be evaluated and accepted based on its corroboration with the Mahabharata references. That's exactly what I said. Okay, what is the internal Mahabharata evidence telling, and if it corroborates, you say, that seems to be nice. Skanda Purana, I think, directionally has a correct idea, and that's what exactly the truth is. This objective comparison between various Puranic accounts is currently missing in the mainstream study of Puranas. And so now, with this information, go find out who is making the evidence of Purana as their key evidence, and why it is inferior, why it is idiotic, why it is foolish, why it is wrong, okay, to start with the Purana evidence or think of Purana evidence as the key evidence in dating or determining the year of Mahabharata war. All right, this is a table here. What I have done, the first column, if you notice, I have repeated those number 111, 222, 333, 444. So there are 4 different options. I have not taken Mayankji's option, that actually I became aware later in a comment to one of my videos. And again, I don't know the source of that. At least what I am showing you in this table, I have shown the source from the Bhagavat Puran, Vishnu Puran and Skanda Puran. Okay, this, the second column refers to the source Puran. Okay, so, and because there are 2 different references, variations in Bhagavat Puran, I have called one Bhagavat Puran 1 and Bhagavat Puran 2. Now what I have done, if you look at into the third column, is the duration between Parikshit and Nanda. Okay, so I'm just essentially repeating that number for each of the 4 sets. Then we go to the fourth column where time of Nanda. And for this entire range from 300 BC to 2300 BCE, I have taken 300 BC, 2300 BC as the 2 extremes, and in between 1700 BCE, approximately, again, all these are approximate numbers, referring to Sri Vedvir Aryaji coming up with that estimate. I am asserting again, there is no decisive, no crucial, no objectively testable evidence for arriving at any of these numbers. But they exist, and we are just still can perform the analysis, and I want to show you that. So that's why these 300, 1700, 2300 will repeat for each of these 4 scenarios. Then let's go to the second last column. This is the time of Parikshit that we estimated based on this. How did we do that? Well, we start with where is my cursor? Okay, we start with the duration between Parikshit and Nanda. Okay, and add to that, because we are going backwards in time, starting with the timing of Nanda, we add this number and go backwards in time. So this 300 plus 1050, that is giving me 1350 BCE as an estimate for the time of Parikshit, and therefore the timing of Mahabharata. If I change any of my estimates, like instead of 300 I go for 1700, I'm going to get the number 2750, and so on. Okay, same thing, and goes down. So then just for fun, from the time of Parikshit, just to show you another nuance, and this may be useful to people who are researching, on different things. So since the timing of Parikshit could be birth of Parikshit or death of Parikshit, or maybe when he was coronated, so I took additional 60 years. Okay, you may or you may not take it, it doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, these are all rough estimates. But if you add 60 to it, you will get 1350 plus 60, 1410, and that could be the timing of Mahabharata, again the estimate for it. So we can stick to this column, and that will be sufficient for our purposes. The second last column, time of Parikshit, okay, which is same as time of Mahabharata war, we can take it. And so what is the range? Based on this analysis, the range in principle can be anywhere from 1350 BCE through 5610 BCE. So what Mayankji referred to, somebody claiming 1500 BCE, yeah, the person will refer to this evidence and say, hey, look, my date is in this range. And someone like me who have 5561 BCE will say, look, my date is also in this range. Okay, what does that tell you? It tells you that this is extremely weak evidence, non-empirical, not objectively testable, and there is a lot of variation on multiple fronts, variation in the duration itself, variations about the exact timing of Chanakya and Nanda itself. There could be even additional confusion as to which Parikshit we are referring to, especially when you see the future tense being used, and that can confuse some people. So it's not a very high quality of evidence. We can look at the evidence and say what is the quality of it. Now, I don't know how to quantify this, but directionally we can say this evidence has a higher quality than this evidence. And we can say this with a testability, higher testability, lower testability, or degree of testability. We can also use this with a degree of corroboration. We can also use this with a degree of falsifiability and so on. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to say, the variation. So I have noticed that people will watch my video and they will quickly jump and comment, and then when I ask them, like, have you read my book or books, have you read my blogs, have you watched my other videos? Now some people have watched my many videos and still they ask the question, and that surprises me, because some of the questions they ask, I have answered them, responded to them many times through my videos, and of course through my books, but also my blogs. Okay, so maybe they are not watching enough, maybe they are not reading enough. Most of the questions are answered in this book, and some people get upset. They say, oh, so are you saying that I have to read your blogs and books and watch your videos before asking a question? Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. Now, how can you ensure that you have watched all my videos? Well, that's tough, but I would say at least watch 50 to 100 videos before thinking, oh, let me ask the question he has not answered. Definitely read my 3 books, read them multiple times. One time reading is not sufficient. This is not a novel, guys. Okay, each one of them are research projects. Each one of them, if written into a PhD thesis in the best technical institutes of the world, each of the book will turn into possibly anywhere from 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 PhD thesis. And I'm not exaggerating. If anything, I am underestimating what is possible. So this needs to be read multiple times. One time is not sufficient. Okay, so if you are in India, Subbu Publication is the best place. They will deliver it to your house. Any issues related to the delivery, payments, do not come to me. Your request will be ignored. You directly need to go to Subbu Publications. Okay, all right, so let's quickly do a summary. So the Purana evidence for the duration of time interval between Parikshit and Nanda range from 1050 years to 3310 years. And if you go to additional Puranas, you may find the range gets bigger. I don't know that. But as an illustration, this should be sufficient to tell you that it is not a one number in the Purana. There are multiple numbers, and even in a single Purana, there are multiple numbers for the exactly same event, so to say, a same event. Then the issue with the timing of Nanda and Chanakya. The estimated time of Nanda also varies from 300 BC through 2300 BCE, and I want to emphasize this point: with no decisive evidence, no crucial evidence, no critical evidence, no empirical evidence, no testable evidence in support of any of these claims. So these remains educated guesses, sometimes careless guesses, sometimes careful guesses nevertheless. Okay, and now if we can combine, but before we combine, now both claims, that is duration between Parikshit and Nanda, but also the year of Nanda, cannot be tested empirically and thus scientifically. I already said that. Sorry for repeating this. And the next point, this is a secondary evidence. Okay, this is not part of the Mahabharata text. If you want to know about Mahabharata, guys, common sense, Viveka Buddhi, common sense, repeat to yourself common sense. You start with the Mahabharata text. Now, if you go to Mahabharata and you don't find sufficient evidence or any evidence that allows you to do it, it's absolutely perfectly okay to go to other sources and look for the evidence. Even if you find internal evidence sufficient, like the way I found to arrive at a precise date of the Mahabharata war, 5561 BCE and no others. it is still okay, in fact even encouraged, to look at additional evidence and see if that evidence tend to corroborate what you have found internal to Mahabharata. But at no point you should forget or you should confuse the hierarchy. It is called Mahatva Mapan or Taratamya in Vijnana Buddhi elements. In understanding Vijnana Buddhi, this is one of the 11 elements of Vijnana Buddhi called Mahatva Mapan or Taratamya. What takes precedence? Which one is the primary evidence? Which one is the secondary evidence? Okay. It's a common sense, but if common sense is not common, you know the cliche. Ask others who know more than you. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshante te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshana. Okay, pranipatena, learn the eccentricities of the experts, learn how to ask the question in a proper fashion so that you don't get the outbreak. Okay, all right. This is secondary evidence, which is also non-empirical. So something can be secondary and empirical. I'm saying this is as such secondary evidence, even the tertiary evidence, and it is unfortunately even non-empirical. Okay, it's not testable independently. That's what it means. Now, some individuals have made use of this evidence. Go find out who these individuals are. In cherry-picking fashion, it's a fallacy. That means stop in your tracks. That means it is a wrong way of doing things. It is unscientific, illogical way of doing things. Stop. Don't do this foolishness. Don't continue with this foolishness. Okay. It is cherry-picking fallacy. It is called. Okay. And it is wrong to claim a estimated year or even a specific year for the year of Mahabharata war using this evidence. All right, I think I'm going to stop there. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Write your comments, and I'll see you soon, shortly, in another video with another question, another interesting subject. Keep watching, keep reading, keep doing chanting, have a sadhana path. Okay, without that, the buddhi doesn't become sharp. And if there is no sharp buddhi, then things become very difficult to comprehend. Okay, namaskar and thank you.